Right, so the brake caliper has arrived. So time to get this up on jack stand again, axle stand, and get the wheel off, and then we'll I think the first thing I'm going to do is tackle the hose connections. I've been spraying them down with WD-40 now for 3 or 4 days, so I'm hoping they're going to loosen off okay. And then I've got some new hoses to use to replace them with. So we'll start pulling this all apart now and see how we get on. It looks to be a little complicated. I've not seen brakes quite like these, but we'll get into that as I start stripping everything down. So this is the caliper. The outside piece here is the carrier, so that stays permanently on the vehicle. I don't need to take that off. We have 2 hoses because this is a dual piston design. So 2 hoses go up to the 2 brake lines here, which go back up to the master cylinder. So this is I need to crack off here and here. Make sure that they come away okay without bending the pipe and without rounding off the nuts. Now I'm going to use just an ordinary spanner, but I may need to get a proper brake spanner just to make sure. But we'll see how these loosen off. If there's any sign of them rounding off, then I'll just delay things a little bit until I can pick up one of those this afternoon. And then this is fairly complicated because we've got springs here which hold in wedges, and then the springs come out, the wedges get knocked out with a pin, come out this way. They'll only go in and out one way, and then these are all going to be cleaned up with a wire brush and then treated with some copper grease, specifically for brakes. But then the whole caliper should come off and then be easy to replace, and then we can start bleeding it. Anyway, let's see what we can loosen these nuts and see what happens. Fingers crossed. Of course, the first thing we should have done is just make sure that we have the right one. But I can confirm, side by side, they are the right calipers. And look at that, they even gave me a little sachet of brake grease. So okay, we'll use that instead. But yeah, we've got brake nipples that aren't broken off or seized, so that's good. Right, anyway, let's get these fittings undone. Well, as I feared, they are very, very, very tight. So before I do any damage to the flats on the whatever the thing is, the fitting, I'm going to try this. It's a little butane torch, and see if I can just heat up the holders to try and release it a little bit, maybe shock it a couple of times. Well, we'll give that a go and see how that goes. We're replacing the pipes anyway, so I'm not too worried about that. But let's give this a go and see what happens. So with a few prayers and that little bit of heat and cycling it a couple of times, so heating it off, spraying it with WD-40, heating it, spraying it with WD-40. Top one came off fairly straightforward. The bottom one there took a little bit of extra effort, and I think I did start to round one of the flats, but fortunately there's a second one there that I can get hold of, so that's going to be fine. I can just clean that up a little bit when we get it all dismantled. But yeah, that's the main thing. That's all ready to come apart. So next is to dismantle them once they've cooled down, remove the pipes, and then we'll get the caliper changed. So next job is to get them dismantled. So this is a bit confusing. So we've got a spring here that will just move backwards and forwards but won't come out. But then I've got this wedge here. So I think what I'm going to do is take the wedge out, which has got a little pin on the back end of it. So I'm going to pull that pin out, drive the wedge out, and then see if that releases the spring. So we'll give that a go now. So that's the pin that's at the back of the wedge. I'm just tapping this slowly. The wedge has now come out. So hopefully that will release the spring, making sure nothing's going to catch me on the way out. But anyway, I'll give that a wiggle around and see what happens next. Okay, not much further ahead at the moment, but I did notice one thing. That is, you look at that hole there, and if I wiggle this, you can see that the spring actually goes all the way through. So I'm not sure, he says, whether that spring can actually be removed with the caliper bracket in there. So I think it's a case now of releasing some of this pressure on the brake pads to loosen it up a little bit, which I thought I'd done a little bit anyway, do a bit more, and then pushing down on the caliper and sliding it out, and I think the springs stay in place theoretically. Right, okay, let's give it a go. And just like that, they're out. Anyway, cleaning up these brake pads. I'm not going to change them because they're in very good condition. I think these were changed when the caliper on the other side was changed. So I'm going to leave those in place. And then I just need to clean everything up basically. So yeah, and as I say, refitting is the reverse of the other way. These don't move by the looks of it. I think they would come out if I need to clean them up, which I probably will do. But they don't seem to impact on the way that the caliper is actually removed. So let's get the rest of it cleaned up. And these definitely need some lubrication and some polishing. They're very, very rusty. And I can see some springs underneath the pads there as well. So make sure those go back in place as well. But apart from that, yeah, they look pretty good. So that's the old caliper out with its hoses. That's the horrible thing. Of course, I'm now draining the reservoir for the fluid, but that's fine because it's all going to get bled again. It's going into a plastic bag down there, so it's not contaminating anything. And these all look okay, so it's just a case of connecting it all back up together again and getting everything cleaned. But yeah, the brake shoes basically go in at the bottom, push round onto a clip that sits underneath. So there's the clip that goes in at the bottom, and then the brake shoes just push up against them. That's obviously to stop them from squealing and making noise. And yeah, I think apart from a bit of cleanup, we're good to go. So let's I'll get that done and we'll start reassembling. So cleaned them up with good old brake clean, and just about to put the springs back in. So there's two different springs by the looks of it on this one, and one of them has extra long tangs along the side. I don't know if you can see those. They go away from the disc, so the side that's nearest the disc is just a little short piece of tang, and then the other one obviously clips around the back of the caliper carrier. They are different heights, but obviously they've been put in there at different times. But anyway, so what I'm going to do now is put a little bit of that lubricant on here, because this is obviously where the pads go in and out a little bit. They don't move very much. And then on the other side we'll do the same thing, and then we can get the pads back in, which will be the next step. Turning around the right way. So little technique for the brake pads. They hook into the bottom down here. You then bring them in front of the carrier at the top here, push down against the spring until this can then be pushed home, and then that's it in there permanently like that. So same again on the other side. Now I've kept the brake pads the right sided, so this was always going to be the outside, the other one is always the inside. I don't want to change them around, but the brakes look in very good condition. There's no lip on them or anything like that, apart from a little bit of surface rust from not having been used. So yeah, we'll get those the other one in, and then we can start putting the caliper with its hoses back on. Right, so the caliper's gone on the top. I've still got to put my other hose on here. But thing to remember with this is that as you, in fact, what I'll just take it apart and show you. Hang on a second. Take you out of there. Right. Okay, so as you put the caliper back in, you see you've got some springs that we talked about earlier on down the bottom there. So the lip there needs to go with the spring behind it. Then you take your wedge, and by pushing it in there, I'm trying to do this one-handed badly, the right way around. So basically you get your wedge in there at the bottom. There's a pin going in here, don't forget. At the top, you now make sure that the spring is behind that lip, like that. And then I got the wedge. These aren't greased or cleaned up yet, so I'm just doing this as a demo. And then I just put a little screwdriver in the gap here, and that just pushes against the spring. And now, he says try to do this with one hand. You can now slide that in. I'm not going to do it now because I can't do it one-handed, but basically you see what I'm doing. That then goes in, tap that all the way through, pin goes in the back up there as well, and job's a good one. But all of this needs greasing anyway. I'm going to put a bit of grease that they've given me on the back of the calipers. So calipers, what am I talking about? Pistons. Just because that's going to wear up against the brake pad. And then if I've got a little bit left over, I'm just going to coat the threads of the grease nipples, because in about 5 years time somebody will be trying to do the same thing again, and guess what, we'll have a problem. So yes, that's basically what's going to happen now. Yeah, all good. All right, let's crack on with the next job. Yeah, which is putting the next hose in, and then we've got to bleed the brakes. All right, see you soon.